Hey, you treasure chest of believers, welcome. My non-university students, welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor. Thanks for coming to hang out with me and for wanting to do more than emotionally vomit.
That's gross.
Oh boy, 4 weeks ago we got a puppy. Tanya said to me, let's just go meet this dog breeder. They sell golden doodles. They're 1/2 golden retriever and 1/2 standard poodle. We can ask her how she runs her program. And I said, okay, but we're not getting a puppy. So we make the 15-minute drive over there, meet the lady who owns the pups. She and her husband are not only friendly, but sincere, Christ-centered folks. We spent an hour talking in her backyard, both about her program and what it means to follow Christ in a loony era. And, oh, you got it. She brings out the 2-month-old female. Aww, adorbs. And after the lady checked us out, 2 days later, phone call. You have yourselves a little golden doodle. Or, as my son calls her, a pootriever. Because these dogs cost thousands of dollars, we took the poor man's route and signed up to be her guardian. The breeder gets to have several litters of puppies, and in a few years we'll own her outright. So, we have a puppy. She chews on everything: sandals, bark chips, cabinets, my garden irrigation line, her water bowl, throw rugs. Tanya even had to put up a protective fence. Don't let her chew up my lavender. And we decided to name her after a Revolutionary War female hero named Mercy. Mercy Otis Warren was a fiery gal. She not only helped to educate women, she hosted protest meetings in the home of she and her husband James, a man who later served as paymaster in George Washington's army. So we thought it'd be fun to name our puppy after some historic figure, and that Mercy Warren loved learning makes our name choice all the better. Now, Mercy's just our third dog, but golly, domesticated puppies have been around for what, hundreds of years? So why do we have to teach Mercy to sit, stay, heel, shush? Goodness, she's a dog. All dogs just know commands, right? Well, we train her 'cause she's a big white poof of energy. The wonderful thing about puppies is puppies are wonderful things. Their noses are made out of rubber. Their tails are made out of springs. Goodness, Mercy goes and goes until she simply collapses in exhaustion. And she gets so excited that when I walk in the room, she sprints up to me, lays down at my feet, and promptly pees on the floor, wags her tail back and forth all through the pee. Again, dogs and humans have been mutual companions for generations, so why do we have to train Mercy? Because she is her own individual. Individuals are unique. Individuals have their own likes and dislikes and tempers and dispositions, their own stories. We don't treat Mercy like she's an adult dog. We don't even treat her like she's part of her canine class, golden doodles. We treat Mercy as an individual creature, deserving of her own dignity. Oh, wouldn't it be beautiful if we viewed people the same way? Not as the rote product of their skin color, but as the unique imago Dei that each one is. What a concept! MLK Jr. sure thought so. And apparently we have to, one generation at a time, keep insisting that individuals deserve their own respect and dignity. You are more than your race. In his famed story, 1984, George Orwell, who was writing in the 1940s as he watched the, to his mind, sad toilet bowl that the Soviet Empire had become, He had had such high hopes for communism. Orwell tells the tale in 1984 of Winston Smith, a low-ranking member of the ruling party in the vaguely named nation of Oceania. Smith, 39 years old, daily leaves his dull gray London flat and heads to his sort of prestigious party job. He works in the Ministry of Truth, a towering skyscraper wherein the government works incessantly to rewrite the facts of history. Winston sits at his desk, his cubicle, receiving little paper slips with words, facts, data on them that need to be rewritten, recrafted. Now, Winston is such an expert at doing that, rewriting the historical facts, that he no longer even needs administrative oversight. He knows precisely how to spin the narrative such that it now reads to the benefit of Oceania. And because the country has no ideological center, no deep values, no abiding commitments, no raison d'etre, except its own power, the historical narrative needs to be updated constantly. Each time he respins the narrative, that fellow wasn't assassinated, he committed suicide. The battle on the other side of the mountains wasn't lost. It was just necessary for our troops to pull back in a sneaky military move. Or, that statue wasn't toppled by a crowd of dissidents. It fell down in a tornado. And all manner of such things. Each time he respins the narrative, he takes that little strip of paper, he tosses it down into a tube, at the bottom of which is a fire that torches them and forever erases them from public memory. When you read through 1984, you watch Winston Smith himself, having been occupied at rewriting history for years on end, he begins to doubt his own mind. Did he really grow up happy? It disorients him. Was his mother truly the monster he now remembers her to be? By constantly rewriting history, Winston's very self begins to collapse from the inside out. And Orwell's story is gruesome not only because it was keenly prescient, it looked into the future of society. Dave Rubin today says that Orwell's book now reads more like a newspaper report here in 2020 than a fiction book. But it was also keenly prescient because he so deftly understood human nature. We are masters at lying to ourselves. And of course, I hardly need to tell you, but we collectively lie to ourselves using words. And if we're not careful, if we're overly casual with our words, we may find that, like Winston Smith, our very 21st century selves are going to collapse from the inside out. Words, words. The book of Genesis says God gave Adama the power to name the animals. So there's a built-in literary quality to life, a built-in linguistic capacity not only for being human, but for declaring the very nature of reality. Across 2,500 years, philosophers have argued that words help us to touch upon reality. Without words, we'd bumble through life. Without words, we'd be incapable of making a grocery list or developing medicinal vaccines. And then more recently, humanities professors tell us words are just the weapons of the rich and powerful. We've all been handed words, they say, to keep us in our place, to keep us serving them. If we just stop using their words and create our own words, we'd finally be free. And then we have the ardent, or what I call the cherished postmodernists. And they tell us that words are finally meaningless. Everything we communicate is finally indecipherable. Well, except for their own words. Their words about words are definitive. And that's the funny thing about words. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to say all words are meaningless without using words that render your own words meaningless. You don't get to say all words are power grabs and then qualify, well, except of course my own. You don't get to say all truth is constructed without admitting that yours is too. You don't get to say there are words that simply must be eliminated without recognizing that sometime in the future, imminently soon, your own words will be eliminated too. Words are weird. Me, I grew up in poverty in terms of money, but I grew up rich in terms of the intellectual climb of my family. For fun, we'd pile in the car, all six of us, go get a Slurpee or an Orange Julius. Oh, so special. Orange Julius? Are you kidding me? And we'd sit down on a bench in the mall. We'd make up conversations people were supposedly having together as they walked by. Man, we were good at it. We'd have ourselves chuckling for an hour or so, and it wouldn't so much be about making fun of other people as it would be about how clever we ourselves could be to spin a yarn that was supposedly going on about the folks walking past. Yes, dear, we really do need to get our ear hair shampooed. Or, oh my, don't my calf-high cherry red socks look just splendid here on Valentine's Day? Or another funny way we'd play with words, we'd say the same word over and over and over. Mug, 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 mug. When your brain lands on that sound, repeatedly thinks about that specific sound, mug, it starts to sound really funny. Words are weird and funny. But holy God, words are supremely powerful. Because among other things, words shape us. Black economist Thomas Sowell, in his book Discrimination and Disparities, notes that words are so powerful they can be manipulated to trump provable facts. Say that again. Words can be manipulated to trump provable facts. Words can be so explosive as to override measurable facts. And you and I wouldn't have to think hard for examples of how that's been the case in human history. The earth is flat. That's not true by facts. Or, the system is rigged. That's not true by facts, even if it feels like it. Or, here's one. All Americans are rich. As billions of people around the planet think of Americans. Or, here's one I hear a lot. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But isn't it true if you get Lyme disease, to think of one that a family member has, if you get Lyme disease, that you might be miserable for years only to have no resulting life benefit? Oh, but my point holds. Words shape us, shape our realities. They can even override facts. And I never would have seen that as a 10-year-old boy sitting on a mall bench in Salem, Oregon, that our family's proclivity for words would help prod me toward earning a PhD. And no, I don't mean slurping Orange Julius's was a one-for-one with preparation for a PhD, but our playfulness with words, that affinity for wordsmithing, did make my eventual move into academia more possible, more of a reality. I had been shaped as a kid by words. And on that point, again, our esteemed Dr. Sowell writes that studies show that, quote, in families where parents have professional occupations, those parents use more words. So their children hear more words per hour than children in families on welfare. In fact, not only do parents in professional occupations use more words, they use a greater variety of words of all kinds. Sowell says those parents use more multi-clause sentences, more past and future verb sentences. Such parents also give their children more affirmative feedback and respond to them more often each hour that they are together. By contrast, Dr. Sowell continued, in families on welfare, negative or discouraging words outnumbered positive or encouraging words by more than 2 to 1. Negative responses included such words as don't, stop, quit, and shut up. So again, we don't merely use words, words shape us. Not only the quantity of words, which actually does matter, but the particularity and the diversity of words. I think stuff like that is fascinating. You guys, this is at least why it is so good for you to read books aloud to your kids. Just thinking, geesh. I could stop right here and make an appeal for Christians to regularly read and study and meditate on their Bibles. How do we permeate ourselves with a biblical worldview? Jesus did it. My teaching friend, Dr. April Westbrook, she once preached a brilliant chapel sermon on Jesus' own use of Deuteronomy and Proverbs. Jesus himself was shaped by biblical Old Testament words. How do we permeate ourselves with a biblical worldview? Well, not apart from reading the Bible, knowing it, drinking deeply from its wells. We have to digest the Bible's words if we want to make it our word. Blarney. Well, I could stop right here and make such an appeal for Christians to study their Bibles, but I won't. Hey, you guys, this podcast is my avocation, my hobby. Only really it's a working hobby. I'm constantly reading in preparation, formatting episodes. It takes an honest slice of my week. And it's a peculiar focus because I can't read your body language. I can't look into your eyes to see what you're thinking like I could when I was back in the college classroom. I don't get much direct feedback. It's a kind of a weird, lonely calling. In 2 Corinthians 7, Paul said the Lord consoled him by sending him Timothy. It's true, we strengthen one another. The body of Christ is a mutually strengthening organism. And on that point, would you please consider a $5 or a $10 monthly pledge at Patreon, Patreon, Uncensored Unprofessor? And if you can't do that, which I certainly understand, still I greedily covet your prayers. Words shape us, and that takes me to the gist of today's casting o' the pod. America has been, is being, deeply shaped by intentionally vague and manipulative words. The cult of the now, the cult that emphasizes feelings over critical thinking, you don't know what it's like to be me, me, so you have nothing to say. The cult that prefers name-calling to careful study, you disagree with me, you hater. The cult that, because it has no center, devours its own in rapid fashion, Mayor Ted Wheeler, even though you've commanded the Portland police to stand down while we wreck downtown, if you won't declare war on the federal government, you need to resign now. The cult of the now, a cult with an inherently Marxist worldview, uses words like weapons. Now, I know that lots of groups can, many groups do, but the cult of the now does it all the time, use words like weapons. They use words to overwhelm or elide, E-L-I-D-E, to go around the facts. Still again, let me quote the eminent scholar Dr. Sowell, quote, even the hardest facts can be made to vanish into thin air by a clever catchword or soaring rhetoric. Words are used like counterfeit money created by clever people to manipulate both the unwitting and the witting masses. End quote. Thank you, Dr. Sowell. So today I thought it'd be helpful and fun to work through a few of those cultish, clever catchphrases, to examine them, to try to understand what they mean and why they're used. So here we go. Fasten your seatbelt. Trigger warning. Diversity. Oh, no, you didn't, Ed. How dare you even utter the word diversity? You can't say it unless you own it. Say what? Diversity is a wildly popular shibboleth, insider code word, religious code word. Even though we're all expected to agree, its meaning is amorphous. I mean, diversity shapes not only the talking points of politicians, it shapes how universities spend their millions of dollars toward policies and identities. Diversity shapes the planning and strategizing of 10,000s of local school boards. But go ahead, I triple dog dare ya. Schwartz created a slight breach of etiquette by skipping the double dog dare you and going right for the throat. Go ahead, I dare you to ask why diversity is so important. You're challenging religious dogma. Or you can ask what I did one day in a faculty meeting. Is diversity more important than excellence? I mean, don't we want the best possible candidate for every single hire? Wow. You could have heard a pin drop. My vile lips had uttered blasphemy. How dare I? Well, Ed, how will the students learn if they can't learn from a face the same color as their own? And I'm thinking, I don't know. I learned from female and male teachers across the first 2/3 of my life. I learned from people who bore no resemblance at all to me. I learned from people whose values differed from mine. Does skin color singularly determine whether people can learn? Diversity. It's a shibboleth. It's religious code. It overwhelms reason. You know this, but standard thinking is that the community will be richer if we had varied perspectives in our midst. Problem? The shades of skin may vary, but if all the perspectives are the same, then what difference does it make? I mean, yes, wouldn't everyone celebrate the beauties of cultures? I would. But no one talked on campus about cultural qualities. No one talked about how beneficial, for instance, it would be to have the Asian love of respect across our campus, bowing to one another, esteem for old age, reverence for wise leaders. No one talked about how cool it would be to have a West African bubbling with joy and generosity sharing our mission. It was diversity of skin color, plain and simple. But still again, the ironic premise of air quotes diversity is that every single person from a given racial grouping would present all the notable characteristic traits of that group. And that's called profiling. It's just not the case, for instance, to note the Polish community, part of my own background, that all Polish Americans eat a steady diet of kielbasa sausages, or that all Polish Americans are deeply Catholic like they are in Poland. Even inside different races, there is tremendous diversity. Oh goodness. Sorry to prattle on about this singularly omnipotent word, diversity. But across my last 5 years or so of teaching, we faculty were required, Jerry, to have a diversity statement in all of our class syllabi. And it was assumed that we all knew what diversity meant, or assumed that we would all write similar statements. If I remember correctly, the diversity officer offered a pre-approved template we could plug and play into our course syllabi. But I wrote my own. Share it with you, I may? Good. Here's what my diversity statement said. Because we're a Christian community, we affirm the following truths. God created the human race with profound diversity, male and female. Genesis 1-2. Every person was created in God's image with dignity. Genesis 1:26, Acts 2:17. God instructed the human race to go and shape his creation with the diversity of beauty, craftsmanship, horticulture, animal husbandry, culture making. Genesis chapters 1 and 2. God created each human being with free will, Genesis 2. The Holy Spirit gives diverse gifts, 1 Corinthians 12 and 14. And the Holy Spirit gives talents to the just and the unjust, Matthew 5:45. The Son of God was incarnated, lived and died for every person who ever lived, John 3:16. God intends to redeem the entirety of his creation, Revelation 21:24. All of that, and yet God is no respecter of persons, Acts 10:34, and that's regardless of status, giftings, temporal, cultural location, or challenges. So we do not count anyone's sex or race as status either against or for their identity. Since, as St. Paul put it, quote, there is no longer Jew or Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus, Galatians 3:28. Therefore, in this class, we will listen to, consider, and process together the informed perspectives of all who have good will, Luke 2:14. That was my class diversity statement. And I know it's unthinkable that I would weave diversity through a biblical worldview. What a childish notion to think diversity is a gift from God. What a hater I was to not frame diversity solely as a matter of skin color. Well, anyway, there's some stuff on diversity. Let's move on to another cultish phrase. Freedom. Freedom is no longer rightly ordered responsibility. I mean, are you more or less free when addicted to fentanyl? Freedom now is the mandated celebration of every single person's life choice. You had your breasts removed? Oh, good for you. Next. Hey, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt my thinking about word games to suggest for you a slice of advice? It is true that we Christ followers are to be gracious, to turn the other cheek, to go the extra mile. It's also true that the Bible teaches us, repeatedly, to draw appropriate boundaries. Right? For example, we draw healthy boundaries regarding our own bodies in light of biblical teaching. We draw prudent boundaries about what constitutes Christian worship. And boundaries are necessary in that we are never called to enable the ongoing poor behavior of manipulators. And in my morning Bible reading, Paul said this from 2 Corinthians 6. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Therefore come out from them and be separate from them. Paul's repeating and broadening for those Greek Christians something he had said to them about sexual intercourse in his earlier letter to them, 1 Corinthians 6:15, quote, your bodies are members of Christ, so don't use your body to be joined together with a prostitute. In 2 Corinthians, Paul is talking about daily relationships, life. Boundaries are healthy. Specifically, it's okay to unfriend people on social media. Hear me carefully. I'm not saying cut the ties with those who simply disagree with you. Goodness, part of being an adult is making room for different perspectives. But you know that person who, it seems, all they can do is post angry political stuff, or their MO is to constantly come onto your page and shame anyone and everyone they can? Or that social media, air quotes, friend who never celebrates your life happies, but only shows up to argue? It's okay to unfriend them. Look it. What's the basis for friendship? Shared values, shared laughter, perspectives on life, joy. If someone you used to know years ago, now you know them only on social media, and they don't share your values, can't laugh at anything, won't share your Christian worldview, only shows up to woke scold, it's okay to cut the cord. I've been doing some cord cutting. Even though as a former professor, I value contact with students who only took one class from me, I'm drawing boundaries because I just don't use social media to be perpetually scolded. And I certainly don't go on social media to leave angry every time because someone's coming onto my page and saying snarky things. So, you're tired of the constant petulant haranguing? Cut the cord. Be free, little bird. Boundaries are healthy. Alrighty then, back to cultish word games. Social justice. How should we define social justice? Equality of opportunity? No, that's not really fair, we're told. Legal equality? No, we already have that. Equality of income? How can we have that apart from a massive revolution that will destroy all industry? And who wants a massive revolution? So I actually went and looked. Oxford Dictionary defines social justice as justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. But that's still pretty vague, so I searched under social justice definition for kids. Maybe that way a clod like me could understand it. Here's what Columbus' mom wrote, quote, that everyone deserves equal economic, political, and social rights and opportunities. Okay, vague? Webster's puts it slightly different. A state or doctrine of egalitarianism. Oh, now I got it. Wait, do I? What's that look like? How do we get there? Is social justice a matter of we'll know it when we see it? How do we move toward a goal that is not specifically defined? I mean, the civil rights movement had quite specific goals, overturning laws and policies that discriminated against and suppressed blacks and other minorities. We reached those goals, thank God. How do we reach social justice? So I kept searching. I came across another definition, ending homelessness. Amen, I thought. How? Physically forcing folks to live in government housing? Some people, how many? A few? I don't know. Some people positively want a carefree young Turk lifestyle of living on the street. Do we mandate they move into government housing projects? Do we fine or incarcerate them if they won't? I wasn't quite clear, so I kept looking. Here's another definition for social justice that regularly pops up. Fighting oppression. Oh, okay, I got it. But wait, what does that look like? Ending racism? Excellent. Everybody's for that. But what does that look like? Defunding police departments across the nation? Ending departments of the police nationwide? Oh, maybe it's tearing down statues or graffitiing urban city halls. Does any of that really help? What if we burn police precincts? Or what if we shoot the police? Do we really think that any of that is going to warm our nation's collective heart to yearn further for social justice? Yuck it. We can't reach a goal if we don't define it. Or is it really, as the Marxists openly say, we need to end America as it is? Do we really need to end the two-party system? Fascinating. For his part, our aforementioned intellectual Dr. Sowell said that social justice is based on two assumptions. First, that statistical disparities in socioeconomic outcomes imply either biased treatment of the less fortunate or, number two, that there is unequal distribution of income implies that we then need politicians to redistribute that income. So either social justice is based on biased treatment or redistribution of wealth, income. Both steps, the progressives tell us, necessitate the use of governmental coercion. We have to have the government get involved to equal the playing field. But Dr. Sowell asks, what if What if the statistical disparities are not, in fact, due to bias? What if the statistical disparities are not, in fact, due to bias? And what if it's actually worse to level the playing field through governmental intrusion? It's just not the case, you guys. It's just not the case that every inequity is due either to bias or racism. But admitting that would require then doing some study, and that would require that we stop creating pseudo-villains against whom we can rage. Nah. It's way more fun to shout, "We demand social justice," than to actually address deep problems. Look again. Social justice, like diversity, is intentionally vague. And that's because, sorry to say it, but that's because this new anti-racism movement is way more about emotions and canceling people and canceling businesses and silencing the opposition, and way less about critical mindedness and persuading people or changing hearts. You cannot coerce a change of heart. I believe the neo-Marxists know that. You cannot coerce a change of heart. So they're willing, and they're openly saying it for the first time in my life, that it's time for an institutional change, time for new governmental systems, time for a revolution. Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is openly saying, quote, "We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it," end quote. Well, do that, and then they can override the hearts and rule through a, quote, better coercive system. But again, I'm sorry that phrase social justice isn't defined. It's not clear, and I'm concerned that vagueness is intentional. All right. There's a few sweeping neo-Marxist religious shibboleths, code words, insider codes. Let's examine a few other words used to shape our collective reality today. Tolerance. Tolerance for centuries meant putting up with or enduring positions, behaviors, or ideas that one did not embrace. For the woke crowd, tolerance means celebration. And if you don't celebrate as tolerate, you're an intolerant hater. But first, the probability that one will spill food on one's clothes is directly proportional to its need to be clean, and that is known as the law of Campbell's soup. Thank you, Mikey's Funnies. Tolerance. How about exploitation? Baseball bat bludgeon, right? You don't like something? It's exploitative. Again, expert on economic patterns, Dr. Soul wrote, "Given exploitation is, we are told, a capitalist problem, we might expect to find that where there are larger concentrations of rich capitalists, we would find correspondingly larger concentrations of poverty. But the hard facts point in the opposite direction." He says, the United States has more than 5 times as many billionaires as there are in Africa and the Middle East put together. Yet, most Americans, including those living below the official poverty line, most Americans have a far higher standard of living than that of the populations of Africa and the Middle East. Indeed, he continues, it would be difficult to find even a single country ruled by Marxists where the standard of living of working class people has been as high as that of working class people in a number of capitalist countries. End quotes. Exploitation? Yeah, undoubtedly it exists, just way less in America than in countries ruled by Marxism. But people like to shout exploitation as a way to shame things they don't like. Here's another Marxist word, family. Family's not, in Marxist ideology, a heterosexual married couple and their extended relatives raising children. Family is whatever group of people who choose to do life together. Again, Black Lives Matter, the organization, BLM says directly on their webpage, quote, "We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. We foster a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather, the belief that all in the world are heterosexual." End quote. BLM, the organization, BLM is not only opposed to the traditional nuclear family structure, they mean to disrupt it. Again, it's a disconnect for me to read and hear Christians arguing to me that BLM doesn't really mean all that. Chorit, Russian for hell. Marxism has been opposed to the nuclear family since St. Carl first put his pen to paper. And apparently, BLM couldn't even bring themselves to put fathers in their list of those they affirm. Family. Here's another neo-Marxist cultish catchphrase: glass ceiling. Any disparity in the amount of money made simply must be due to some closeted bias. It is not the case, we're told, that some people make more than others because they've had more schooling, or work much longer hours, or work a job requiring a decade of training or more, or have to take more personal risks to their safety. For example, electrical linemen? No, we're told it's all due to the bias of the overlords, those who secretly conspired to get over on the little guy. Reductionistic much? Thinking of ceilings? I need to tell you, I taught my son about gravity by throwing pasta and sauce on the ceiling. He didn't get it at first, but it wasn't long before the penne dropped. Thank you, upjoke.com, for the humorous interjection. Here's the dealio, you guys, and this is important for understanding our present-day societal foment. You listen to me now, sonny. Cult of the now religious phrases are less words and more word clouds. No. Surely you've been in some administrator's meeting where they put up on the screen all the feedback words that they collected from a survey, right? You look at that and there's 50 to 60 words, some tilted this way, some tilted that way, some in 7-point font, some in 18-point font, and they stand in front of that picture, the administrator, and says, "Here's what all of you contributed to this matter." And then, oh gosh, it was hysterical for me because it happened every time. And then they picked the word they wanted it to mean, at least for that meeting. They picked the word that they wanted it to mean, and you'd all be told what all of that feedback really meant. Now, word clouds. Words for Marxists are less words and more word clouds. You pick what you want, she'll pick what she wants, and we'll all fight for it together. These Marxist neo-religious shibboleths are word clouds that foment tremendous emotional energy. You guys know this, but one reason I started the UU podcast was to critically think with Christians about reality. The reason I sign off with every episode, private or premium, with "turn your brains on, everybody," is because there is so very little thinking that goes on today. I've done whole episodes on this, but we've been taught, or better, 2 to 3 generations of people have been taught to process reality using emotions, not brains. And for reasons I won't articulate here, We have been reprogrammed to process reality through emotional, not intellectual channels. Words today are more vaguely word clouds that both capture and convey tremendous emotional energy. Whether you say social justice or glass ceiling, you're conveying the idea that there is great evil that needs to be battled and defeated. And those words, those phrases are intentionally vague so they can be tweaked and adjusted as the situation morphs. Constantly vague so they can be constantly tweaked. That is the 100-year dynamic of Marxism. That is what it is, Virginia. So why all the violence? Because society has been taken apart from the inside out. We've undone, like Winston Smith, we've undone and rewritten our history so frequently that we no longer know or even remember who we are. The anger that we see out on the streets mirrors an ugliness of soul. The aesthetic form reflects the state of the soul. Paging Winston Smith, paging Mr. Winston Smith. Excuse me, sir, your soul is empty. Thanks for listening, you guys. God bless you and keep you. And please, go and turn your beautiful God-given brains on, everybody.